It's making sure that you have software in place that is capturing the work that your team is doing, not just the result. So, if you're using a CRM and you're entering in your sales, you're letting your sales reps just enter in deals at the end of the sales process and processing order. That's not,
Yeah.
you're not tracking what they're doing. You need a CRM that helps them with prospecting, helps them with dialing, helps them with, that forces them to create a deal when they have an actual live person on the other end that's willing to talk to them, not after it's qualified and closed. And that's not just sales, right? I think sales is often the worst offender in older businesses, at least because the salespeople are used to getting away with not using these tools effectively. But if you're not using the tools effectively, you can't manage. You can't determine what inputs and outputs produce outcomes. And so without that, you're flying blind. You'll never be able to leverage AI to move faster.
This podcast is brought to you by Fast Slow Motion, a team of expert consultants that have helped thousands of growing businesses build scalable systems on the HubSpot and Salesforce platforms. To learn more, visit www.fastslowmotion.com. Welcome to the Fast Slow Motion podcast, where we discuss strategies, ideas, and insights about how to build a business you love while enjoying your life. I'm your host, Eric Housh. Really honored today to have joining me Pete Caputa. Pete built the HubSpot Solutions Partner Program from the ground up, and he's had a pretty massive influence on how that entire ecosystem thinks about growth. Pete is currently the CEO of Databox. Pete, we got a lot to get into today. Thank you so much for joining us. I've heard you say that while companies now have more data than ever, most of us aren't equipped to actually use it. Why is it so hard for leaders to turn all these numbers and all this information into actual confidence and execution?
I don't know. If I knew the answer exactly to that, I'd probably be retired at this point. The biggest struggle in our business, right, is that we help people aggregate all their performance data so they can then monitor, report, and analyze it. Many of our customers don't get to the point where they actually operationalize the processes required to do that. So like the technology can help them aggregate the data, the technology can help them monitor, visualize and monitor the data. But even with AI, you can analyze data much more easily and more thoroughly and more frequently than we ever could. I think most organizations are just not used to looking at data before they make decisions or looking at data to guide what they actually work on. And so it's that habit that most companies just don't have. And it's a series of processes and habits that are required. But most companies just aren't doing it. They're just kind of doing what they did before.
Yeah, I think we see this all the time, right? I know we do personally in the line of work we're in, helping organizations bring in HubSpot to run their business better. A lot of folks are stuck in these cycles, right? Where they're collecting the data. They're looking at it maybe every 3 months or so. They're trying to drive the car through the rearview mirror. Why is that approach so common?
I think most people are looking to largely do what they did before, right? They're looking for affirmation that their decisions were the correct ones and that they're doing the right things. And so a lot of people use data as like a report card, right? Where you get that, in school, we used to get report cards at the end of the quarter, end of the semester, end of the year. And what they're not doing is like using data to see how they're doing and adapt, right? So like like sticking with that analogy for a second, and I'm making this up on the spot here, but sticking with that analogy would be like a student who gets grades every week from quizzes and tests and assignments and homework, but they ignore it until the end of the semester. And then they're like, why did I get a B? Or, oh, I got an A, great, right? Like they had no clue. They were just going through the motions, doing what they were told to do. And I think that's the way most companies operate. And that's more of a cultural problem that stems from, I think, two things. One is people that do the work are used to being told what to do as opposed to really thinking what would have the biggest impact on the business. And the second thing is that leaders are either hiding or just not making the data accessible. They're either hiding the data from their team or they're not making it accessible. And if they don't make the data about performance accessible to their team members don't get the report card. They don't get the grades after they got their homework. They don't get to look and see what they got wrong, what they didn't get right. And so it's two, I think, cultural things. One is some people just don't want to think critically. They just want to do their job. And I want that to be largely the same so they can feel mastery over it or control over it. And then second is business owners who really haven't empowered their team with access or decision-making authority.
And I would say it's not even their own teams in a lot of cases. Part of your methodology is you advocate for this cross-functional view from marketing, sales, ops, finance, so you can really see how these things link together.
That's right.
I would imagine that's a huge hurdle too, that if these guys are protecting it in the silo, then from their own team, then they're probably not sharing it across the org either.
Yeah. Like a lot of organizations, most organizations, right, organized by function, whether it's sales, marketing. Within marketing, there might be 4 directors with 4 different functions. And then, of course, you got customer success, you got product and manufacturing or operations, you got finance, of course. And I think, maybe except for finance, all of them are afraid sometimes of actually sharing that data across the org because it potentially reveals things that they might not be doing optimally, or just, they're afraid of maybe misunderstanding, right, from other people looking at data. So yeah, there's a lot of, I think, organizational barriers to sharing data across the org. On the flip side, though, we do see a lot of companies who embrace that, where they're sharing openly across the org. And it becomes really powerful because then people at different levels of the org can collaborate effectively to problem solve. They can, one, spot the problems, they can raise the problems, and then they can brainstorm or build solutions to the problems. Starts like when that starts to happen organically is when you have some magic happen, right? It's like the boss doesn't need to be in the room for every decision. There isn't that mistrust, right? There's wins, cross-functional wins that happen.
Yeah. Pete, let's just kind of stay there for a minute because obviously there's probably a whole episode we could do around overcoming the psychology of the silos and getting these executives to share and play on the same page.
Yeah.
We won't stay there. We won't turn this into a therapy session, but let's skip ahead and just say, once we've been successful, once we've got the data talking to each other, a big part of your approach is defining inputs and outputs for every function.
That's right.
So what's your approach to get a team to stop looking at the final goal and start obsessing over the processes and activities that get us there?
It's funny because I'm just talking about this with my VP engineering this morning. I think a lot of organizations, they decide, here's what we're going to do. And then they go do it and they're busy doing the work. And then when it's time to evaluate, they're looking at the lagging indicators. And I've seen it happen both ways where it's like, yeah, we crushed it. Good job. And then I see it where it's like, oh, we didn't hit the goal. What happened, right? Neither way is really good because a lot of times when you just look at the outcome, you can't necessarily correlate that to the work. On the flip side, right, when you don't hit the outcome, then everyone's questioning, why do we even do this? Was this the right thing? Should we have done something else? Or are the people doing the work good enough? There's all these doubts that come up. And so in our methodology, we have a process where for every function in the org and every initiative, like new project, innovation project that a company takes on, they have to think through the system. They have to think through the inputs, the outputs, and the outcomes. So an input is really generally 2 things, time and money. An easy one is if you're spending money on ads, that's money plus the person or people to manage it. And then outputs are the things that people do. It could be with ads, sticking with ads for a second. It could be the creation of new ad campaigns would be an output. And the outcomes for that, of course, are clicks, conversions, and ultimately sales. And you could do that for any function, for any project that you have. And if you do that, then what happens is you can have early indicators of success. One of the hardest things to do these days is measure the impact of different marketing activities. They all get blended together. And generally organizations look at what they evaluate things based on what they can measure. And oftentimes most organizations measure is that last click before a buyer did something. And in the old days, it used to be like the salesperson getting credit from marketing got 0 credit. But at least now, these days, right? Marketing's getting that last click attribution, but that means that there's a whole lot of other marketing that didn't get any credit. Yeah, I think I read something, I forget who did the report, but I read something this morning around it's like 82 touch points before somebody actually buys a B2B product or service. And therefore, it's every LinkedIn post, it's a YouTube video, it's an article on your website, it's a conference that they went to and heard you speak. It's all these things that aren't necessarily tied to the sale in an automatic way. And so if you're a marketer, you need to pay attention to what actually gets attention, what gets impressions, what gets engagement, comments, likes, whatever. And although those are usually historically been dismissed as vanity metrics, those are actually your earliest clues. Those are your outputs, right? Or I should say leading outcomes. Sorry.
Mhm.
That judge your outputs, judge your posts, judge your videos, judge your articles. And the outcome, of course, is still the lead in the sale, but you're not going to be able to tie it to that. So what's really important is thinking through that system and thinking through all your inputs, all your outputs, all the outcome metrics, including the leading and the lagging ones. So you can really adapt what you're doing on a more frequent basis. Because if you wait till everything's done, wait till the quarter's done or whatever, or wait till the project's done, or wait till the campaign is finished, and then you look back, you had no control to influence and tweak it based on what's actually working. So that's the key, is looking input, outputs, outcomes. We also look at not just the volume of stuff, but it's important to look at the quality of the work. So the best way to look at that is through conversion rates usually, or ratios of some sort, right? And with ads, you're looking on your return on ad spend by campaign or other factors. With your website, right? And website pages, you're looking at your sign up to conversion rate. With your sales team, you're looking at how what the close rate of the actual salesperson is. So you got to look at the quality stuff. And so when you look at volume of work, volume of outputs, and the quality of outputs, or the quality of the work, you can start to see earlier whether something's working and whether you could do more of it, do less of it, teach other people to do it, apply that lesson across other channels or things that you're doing. So that's really the key, is setting up the system first.
Setting up the system, linking strategy to execution, making sure that we have the data there so that if we need to pivot on that strategy, we're doing it early versus doing it, 3 months too late. Pete, one of the things we're currently wrestling with here, and it's something that we kind of had a false start on last year. We've gotten a lot better at it this year, is the OKR process. I did this back in my Intel days. That's going to date me a little bit.
Yes, it is. But that's the birthplace. Yeah,
that's the birthplace where they came up with this framework.
Right. Yeah.
So even though I've got 20 something odd years of experience with it, it's still tough. It's still tough to kind of get this process right internally within an organization. You really recently made a tweak and you added initiatives to create your OGI framework. Unpack OGI for us and tell us a little bit about why it's so important to connect a numeric goal to a specific project, especially for organizations like FSM that may be in that 100, 200 employee range.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of OKRs. If somebody's listening to this and they haven't read Measure What Matters by John Doerr, who kind of describes how OKRs were originated at Intel and propagated over to Amazon and Airbnb and Google and all that, they should. It's a great book. And what I love about OKRs is it helps connect strategy to planning, because it forces you to ask, how can we serve our customers better? How can we beat our competitors more handily? How can we innovate based off of trends? How do we address threats to our business? It helps you connect the strategic questions to what we're going to do this year, the objectives. And then for those that aren't familiar with the acronym, it means objectives and key results. And with objectives, this is the qualitative kind of goal that you have. So it's we want to serve our customers better in this way, right? We want to, in our case, one of our objectives is leverage AI better in our product, right? Leverage AI better to distribute a product. So those are objectives. Goals that are connected to those are the way we measure it. So the way we measure whether we've integrated AI effectively into our product is the number of people using it and the frequency at which they use it. And then we have targets right around that. So that's objectives and key results. What is great about OKRs for a large organization is it allows them to cascade the OKRs down to there. And so imagine running OKRs at Google where there's, I don't even know, but I'm guessing it's hundreds of thousands. I don't know how many employees they have, but it's some ungodly amount of employees. You can't sit there and say here's the team that's going to go work on this project and here's the team that's going to go work. You can't possibly organize that top down. You need to set a high level OKR of like, hey, we need to beat OpenAI, at this game or whatever. And then you need to challenge the teams to think, how do they beat OpenAI? How do I beat OpenAI based on what I'm doing? And here's my initiative, right? Here's my OKR. But in a smaller org, we found that that's like overkill. A small mid-size org, that's extreme overkill. Because usually in a small or mid-size org, 70 to 80% of your resources are going to do what you did last year. You're going to serve clients similarly. You're going to build products similarly. You're going to execute projects similarly. Like, you're not going to change. And there's a small portion of time or people that is allotted to innovation. And so you have to be really thoughtful about narrowing that list of things down. And so most orgs, it's 3 to 5 things. If you're 20, 250 employees, I still think it's 3 to 5 is the right number. And so what we do is we name the initiative. So it's not just an objective and a goal, but it's an initiative, exactly what we're going to do, at least in a given quarter, to achieve that objective and achieve that goal. And what that does is it allows us to get to the next level of saying, who are the resources needed for that? Because usually we have to pull them from different parts of the org. And then it allows us to move into project scoping and planning. So that's the way we do. We do objectives, goals, and initiatives kind of all together. Now, the initiatives, we reevaluate every quarter, or in some cases every 4 months, depending on, how long some of those initiatives take. But we're generally reevaluating, is this the right initiative? Should we kill this initiative? Should we tweak it? Should we merge it? Should we double down on it? Based on what we're seeing. So that's really gives us a common focus across the org to say these are initiatives that we're working on.
Yeah, just kind of another layer of execution to help you reach those goals. Love it. Well, Pete, I'm really proud of us. We made it about 20 minutes into this tech-focused podcast without even saying the word or letters AI, but now you've let the cat out of the bag. So let's stay there for a minute and talk about how AI is changing the nature of work instead of just having analysts manually run reports every month.
Yeah.
How are you seeing AI allow team members to kind of shift their focus toward deeper analysis?
Yeah. Well, I will say that we're seeing massive uptake of AI powered analysis by some orgs. And we're seeing some not even understanding how to spell AI still. So there's a wide gap. However, if the pace of AI adoption in other areas of business is any indication, my expectation is in like 6 months, most companies will be saying we'll be doing this work. But what we see the cutting edge people do is they're changing 2 things about the way they analyze data: the frequency at which it occurs and the number of people that are doing it inside their org. Historically, most companies suffer from an analysis bottleneck.
Mm-hmm.
They're relying on 1 or 2 smart people smart people who know math to do the analysis, right? That could be, in some cases, it's the owner or the leader of the business who started the business and understands it, and maybe they're technically adept. It could be an operations team, usually when a team gets a little bigger, or somewhere in between. There's sometimes just like it's a financial analyst that becomes the company analyst. But either way, there's usually some kind of bottleneck. You got the senior person that's like trying to manage and lead the business, probably overseeing some function a little tightly, and also doing analysis. Or you got an operations team that's both responsible for how processes get done, tools get implemented, billing for tools, right? All this other stuff. And then they're squeezing in analysis. So there's always a bottleneck. And what AI does, combined with some other technologies, allows a company to create a system where anyone can analyze deeply at any time. And that new thing unlocks the frequency, right? So if you can have anyone, even the most junior person in your company, running analysis, that especially if it spans your sales, marketing, finance, and understands the implications between all of those things, and they can sit there and do that analysis, they can inform their decisions without ever having a conversation with anyone else. Same thing from a top down. Like, for example, I used to go to every one of my VPs and we had a process every month where their managers would report up what they've done and how it worked to their directors, to their VPs, to me, right? And then I would sit there every month and look at it and say, we're off here, and hey, fix this, or maybe we should stop doing this or whatever. And we'd have that conversation. Now, I'd literally log into Claude, which is connected to the Databox MCP server, which I can explain, I guess. And what I do is I have Claude skills defined that help me analyze different parts of the business. And inside Databox, I've not only connected all of the tools that we use, HubSpot, SEMrush, YouTube, LinkedIn, all the ad platforms, Mixpanel, our CRM, of course, etc. And so I can write these skills that know how our system is built that actually pull back real-time analysis of our business. Not only that, I can connect to Asana, our project management tool, Slack, our communication tool, and I can gather context that might have impacted what those numbers are. And so I moved from a world where I had a lot of people spend a lot of time reporting up to a world where they don't have to do anything. And I have not only once a month access, but instant access to everything. And so now think about empowering a product manager or a marketing manager or a sales manager with that same visibility to be able to see what's going on across the business to inform or enable them to propose solutions cross-functionally or within their group, right? Now you have a real organization that's learning. But so that's what I'm doing. We have lots of other companies doing that. There's another company that we work closely with. They've built a system that not only monitors the performance of a company in real time, and their company's complicated. It's like they have 30 different websites because they sell in different geographical markets. They run ads on 8 different ad platforms. They sell both B2B and use ActiveCampaign for that, and they sell B2C where they use Shopify. And so very complicated business. But they not only have complete visibility, I should say their AI has complete visibility into performance of their business at any time, but it's actually running jobs to analyze things, spot variations that are out of the norm, highlighting those, running analysis on different systems to identify if there's an issue there. If there's an issue, identifying the root cause if it can by looking at dimensional metrics, correlations, etc. And then if it validates with a high confidence that there's an issue, it creates a task for the team to go in and like look at this or do something about it because it knows why. And then he takes it to the next step where it's actually creating the task. And then when the task is complete, it's going back and looking at the data, the
Double
AI,
checking the work. Yeah.
to see if it worked. And if it worked or it didn't work, it's storing that whole logic. It's storing the issue it found, the solution it recommended, what task was completed, and whether or not it worked or what degree it worked. So now it has this running memory in history of what's happened, what's done. So the next time there's something similar, it can consult that library of things. And the crazy part about it is this guy is building this for other businesses to hook into too, so that the learning is cross team, cross company. And so the level of stuff that I'm seeing is crazy, but it's not being adopted by most companies yet.
I mean, just the situation you just explained, the layers of complexity within that one company, I'm imagining that's resonating with some folks out there. Guys are going like, man, I've got 50 tools running this different company. I've got zero connection across the board. I've got zero clarity. Those CEOs out there that are hearing this and going, wait a minute, there's a better way, right?
Well, I know. Yeah, no, like my eyes got open to this like in the last few months, and I've been using AI pretty intensely, but like not really thinking about it. What's different now is that there's technology that sits kind of under the AI that takes structured data from your systems and uses what people call a semantic layer, which understands the relationships between data in multiple ways. It could be like in a CRM, which I know you guys work with extensively, right? In a CRM, there's different tables of data, right? And to be able to look at, say, sales closed by sales rep, you need to join different tables. And it's in some CRMs, it's even more complicated than this, but you at least going to need a list of salespeople, and you're going to need a list of deals, and you're going to need the connection between them. So that's at least 3 tables you got to join to figure out and so that's the semantic layer, part of the semantic layer. There's also what's called metric definitions, which define how to turn the raw data into a metric. And so data and metrics are stored differently and are calculated differently. So for example, the engagement rate on your website, if you want to look at that from last week to see how many people actually stuck to your website and didn't leave right away, you can't take the daily values and average them, right? Because on Monday, you might have 1,000 visitors. On Tuesday, you might have 10. If you take those 2 averages, it's not going to be right. You have to look at the 110,000, or I'm sorry, the 100,010 people, and then look at the number that didn't and redo that math, right? So, and that's just one example. Every metric has different ways of being calculated. Sometimes you're summing things. Sometimes you're taking the lightest value. Sometimes you're taking an average. Like there's all kinds of different, but basic arithmetic as well as more complex math sometimes to calculate a metric. And so what's new is that there are systems that actually have that stuff baked in, the semantic layer and the understanding of the metrics. And so now when you go to AI and you say, calculate my bounce rate from last week, it doesn't trust AI to do that. It uses that third-party system to return that. But the AI is really good at taking the data and explaining it to people. And it's also really good at sequencing a set of steps that are required for analysis. So for example, if you say, hey, why did my website traffic go down? What the AI knows is like, oh, I should look at website traffic by page. I should look at website traffic by channel. I should look at website traffic by ad campaign, whatever it is. It could dig in 20 different ways, right? It's good at that logic. It's just not always, it's not good at that math to turn that raw data into KPIs. So by combining the LLMs with this third party stuff, that's when you can really start to do analysis. And that, I wouldn't say it didn't exist a year ago. It wasn't, most technology companies hadn't put it together yet. And because the tools weren't as interoperable as they are now, right? We didn't have MCP servers,
right?
Things like that. So anyways, the last, say, 6 months to a year is when this stuff has started to become put in place by more of the leading edge of.
It's like we're figuring out what problems AI needs a little help solving, and then we're building tools to make sure that we're actually addressing those and enabling that tech.
Yeah. There was a survey recently that I saw, like, it was like data analysis, like, so it was like the 5th or 4th most popular use case amongst some sample of AI LLM users. And I think there's still a lot of people, like, and I kind of dug into that. I did my own survey of about 100 people informally. And what I realized is that most people think they're doing analysis. Really what they're doing is they're uploading data or screen grabbing a chart and uploading that into, or entering that into the LLM. And the LLM is pretty good at taking simple data and simple charts, understanding what it is and spitting it back at you and maybe allowing you to enter some context so it explains it. But that's not analysis. That's basically reporting, right? You're reporting something.
Pete, we've talked about a lot today. We've covered a lot of ground. For CEOs out there that are like, hey, you know what? We're behind. We could be executing at a much higher level, a much quicker level, looking out the windshield versus the rearview mirror. What's the first adjustment those leaders need to make to their routine to get them closer to this more expedited decision?
Yeah. There's 2 parallel paths that I recommend starting, like, together. The first one is, like, it's making sure that you have software in place that is capturing the work that your team is doing, not just the result. So, if you're using a CRM and you're entering in your sales, you're letting your sales reps just enter in deals at the end of the sales process and processing order. That's not, you're not tracking what they're doing. You need a CRM that helps them with prospecting, helps them with dialing, helps them with, that forces them to create a deal when they have an actual live person on the other end that's willing to talk to them, not after it's qualified and closed. And that's not just sales, right? I think sales is often the worst offender in older businesses, at least because the salespeople are used to getting away with not using these tools effectively. But if you're not using the tools effectively, you can't manage. You can't determine what inputs and outputs produce outcomes. And so without that, you're flying blind. You'll never be able to leverage AI to move faster. That's number one. And then there's a whole sequence of steps. Like, if somebody says, hey, I want to use AI and I'm interested in Databox, our first step is like connecting their systems, making sure that the data is there, making sure that they've defined their metrics, inputs, outputs, outcomes, quality metrics, or conversion rates, right? Making sure that stuff's thought through. Because if you haven't thought through some of that stuff, you can't expect the AI to think that through.
You're going to miss the mark. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a testament to the type of work you guys do, right? Helping people actually implement the CRM systems effectively. The second one is get your strategy in order. I think most companies are they've confused what strategy is. Strategy to them is often the combination of things that they do. So it's like, oh, our strategy is to sell direct, or our strategy is to sell through channel, or our strategy is to do YouTube video marketing or content marketing, right? That's not strategy. Those are tactics. Tactics may or may not work for you. Most likely they will if you have a good strategy, but strategy is different. Strategy is like who you're serving, how you're serving them differently or better than someone else. That's what strategy is. And to do strategy, you really need to do customer research, not just a one-time event, but all the time. You need to be paying attention to what your competitors are doing, not so that you can copy them, but so that you can find a way to be different and stand out from them. And you need to pay attention to market trends. The world changes faster and faster. And so if you're not paying attention to what's changing out in the world in terms of technology, global affairs, whatever it is that affects your business, then you're going to miss the boat on opportunities and you might wake up one day and be irrelevant. So if you're not paying attention to customers, trends, and competitors, like you can't build that differentiated strategy. So usually take people on both paths because they can happen somewhat concurrently and then converge. Where it converges is in the definition of those OKRs, because OKRs need to be a mixture of both what you want to achieve in your strategy in 10 years, back down to what we're going to do this year, but also based in reality of where your business is now, what resources you have, what's possible, that's based off of forecastable data. And so those two things end up converging when you do planning. But you got to get both strategy and execution in order before you can get your shit.
Pete, I feel like we could probably do a whole series on strategy.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Most orgs skip it. Every business that's ever gotten big has had a strategy. Sometimes they dumb their way into strategy at the right time, right place. We can name a few AI companies that maybe got there. But for most of us, we have to spend that time understanding customers, understanding the market, understanding competitors.
Yeah. Well, Pete, I've really enjoyed our conversation today. Really appreciate you joining us on the show. I think the takeaway for the listeners is a predictable revenue, predictable execution isn't something that you buy off the shelf. You got to build it. You got to have the systems. You got to have clarity. You got to have consistency. It sounds like you can really help people think through this process end to end. So if people want to see your work, what you're building at Databox, how you can help them, where's the best place they can learn more?
Yeah, so I post daily on LinkedIn. People tell me I'm a little crazy. They tell me go get a job, go get a real job, but I post frequently. I treat it like a diary. It's like I sharing what we're working on, what we're doing, what our customers have done, what our partners are doing. And so it's a good way to kind of learn if you're intrigued, but not ready to take any action. If someone wants to start aggregating their data, leveraging AI to do analysis, I encourage them to go try our product. We actually have a free version that allows somebody to connect 3 data sources and start querying their data. Most people would be surprised how quickly you can start to do data analysis using AI by just trying out our free product. But it's a good way to kind of see what's possible with this stuff and how you can improve decision frequency and speed, as well as make decision making more distributed throughout the org.
And we'll throw a link to your LinkedIn page and a link to databox.com in the show notes, make it really easy for everybody to find you there. Really want to thank everybody for listening today. This has been a fun one. This is going to be a wrap for today's show. If you do want to dive deeper into how to stop drowning in data, start making faster business decisions, Pete's here for you. We'd love to help you think through it. You can find us at fastslowmotion.com. We'll see you next time.